It is another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the 7 movies released on December 12th, 2008. And we are getting close to Oscars. We are in Oscar season, after all, and we are getting close to the holiday season, so we have another wide assortment of movies to look at here. A lot of Oscar contenders, and a lot of movies that the studios are trying to mimic the success of previous years. Case in point with our first film that we have here. Hey, I Am Legend was a big success last year in the same time period, so let's go ahead and put another sci-fi movie out there on the same weekend, even though Keanu Reeves is no Will Smith in terms of box office. But, hey, we can try with a remake of one of the greatest sci-fi films of all time. Here's Scott Derrickson's The Day the Earth Stood Still. Boy, talk about a major letdown. I mean, it was already going to be hard to top one of the greatest sci-fi movies ever made, but man, this missed the mark big time. You have Keanu Reeves starring as Klaatu, of course, the alien sent to try to change human behavior in an effort to save Earth from environmental degradation, and this version replaces the Cold War-era theme of political nuclear warfare with the contemporary issue of negative human impact on the environment. And as you see in the trailer, Jennifer Connelly, Jaden Smith, John Hamm, Kathy Bates, and also John Cleese is in here as well as 80 Miles from Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, one of the writers on that. And man, there's just so many things about this movie that just don't work in particular. I mean, Keanu Reeves is doing the best he can as Klaatu. I think that's not bad casting at all, but the biggest problem with the movie is quite simply that it's kind of a lame remake. And yeah, the visuals do look incredible in here, but at the same time, it's just kind of like what I've always said before. Visuals don't always make the movie. You gotta have more than just great visuals to it, and the film has a really lackluster script to work with here. I mean, they should have gotten much better writers to modernize the story of The Day the Earth Stood Still for a new generation. There's a way you can make this movie and make it well done, and this movie almost does it. I mean, a good starring Keanu Reeves, a good cast. Scott Derrickson is not a bad director at all. He's made a lot of really good movies, with very rarely him missing the mark. I mean, his worst film's probably The Exorcism of Emily Rose, and even then, there's still elements to that film where you see the potential there, but really, I think the biggest flaw with the movie is that it just has a really bad script, and it just makes it feel like it's nothing more than a cash grab on the name The Day the Earth Stood Still. And it also doesn't help that one of the reasons why is that one of the people that needs to help decide if the Earth needs to be saved is that annoying Jaden Smith, who's literally there to just be annoying and whining and talking about how, oh, if my dad were here, he'd do this. If my dad was here, he'd do that. Well, guess what, Jaden? Will Smith ain't gonna show up here. I'm like with Patino, you know. Will Smith ain't walking through that door. You've got Neo from The Matrix, and coincidentally, Will Smith was up for The Matrix at one point, so I guess that's what he was hoping for here. But still, I don't know if it was just a bad script overall, but man, he was so annoying in this movie, Jaden Smith was. And I don't hate Jaden Smith. I've liked him in movies. I've liked him in The Pursuit of Happiness, and he's going to be in the Karate Kid remake, where he was actually pretty good in about 2 years' time. But other than that, though, this and After Earth, you can kind of tell that he was not going to be anywhere near as good as his father is, in terms of acting, but the film just falls apart because of the bad script. It's a script that's so generic and so put together at the last minute because they had to get this movie out there so they could cash it on the name and put it out on the same weekend that I Am Legend did, which, like I said before, it's not anywhere near I Am Legend good. I mean, there's a potential that somebody could remake this and actually make it work. Even if you got Scott Derrickson to come back to it. Him and Cargill, Carlisle from Spill.com, who's written movies with him in the past, I mean, they could probably make a better version of The Day the Earth Stood Still than the one they made here. But I don't know if that's ever going to happen anytime soon. But I wouldn't mind it per se. I would actually mind seeing somebody trying to remake this again. But as it is, it's a very bad remake. It's one of the year's worst movies. And just such a shame. The potential was clearly there for this film to really be good. And it just not so much. So that's The Day the Earth Stood Still. So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie here. Not a good sign when you're releasing a Christmas movie after Thanksgiving, because usually if you have a good Christmas movie, you put it out before Thanksgiving so you get the traction going and the legs can carry it through the holidays. And, of course, this is coming out 2 weeks before Christmas, so that must mean Nothing Like the Holidays is bad, right? not really. Yeah, you can see from the trailer, it's a very standard formula from the movies that we've kind of talked about before. You got your Family Stone, your Dan in Real Life, your This Christmas. It's very much a very similar movie to that, and yeah, that could easily hurt the film from the get-go, but hey, you got a good cast in here, and they are able to make it work, all things considered. You have a story, and it has a unique little twist to it, too. And it's not just the same movie we've seen done before. But in this one, you have a Puerto Rican family living in the area of Humboldt Park, Chicago, facing what may be their last Christmas together. And the family includes Alfred Molina and Elizabeth Pena as the mother and as the father and as the husband and wife, and you have all these other family members: Luis Guzman, John Leguizamo, Deborah Messing, Alfred Molina, Freddie Rodriguez, Vanessa Felito, Jay Hernandez, and Melanie Diaz. So a pretty good cast overall in here, and yeah, it definitely has a lot of the same stuff that we've seen done before in other movies. We've seen a lot of the same elements are here. There's somebody who dies in the movie, and I'll give them credit for actually putting together a pretty good twist, because they do a pretty good job of telling you, not in the trailer, what exactly is the big twist in here. Yeah, somebody is going to die, but the way that they set it up here, they basically set it up because they think that one person is cheating on the other, and that's what the setup is, but they do a pretty good job of kind of like not making it not making it too obvious for you to figure out right away. But what makes the movie work for me, per se, is the casting. I think this is a really good, talented cast coming together here. You got great people all across the board in here, really putting their heart and soul together for this, and they do feel like a real family in here. Everybody in here plays their parts very well. You can tell that everybody in here, our brother is our family. Like, you can buy them as a family unit all together, and it works very well. It does a very good job of lifting your spirits up, and yeah, it may be very formulaic in the story department, but as I've always said before, like, a story can be very formulaic, but if you're putting to get your best effort into other things like the performances or maybe even the dynamics of the story changing around a little bit here, you can honestly get it up a notch to make it something that actually is worth it in the end. And I think this is something that's worth it. It's definitely the weaker of these movies. I would still rather watch Family Stone, This Christmas, or Dan in Real Life over this, but I didn't hate it. I actually did kind of enjoy it for what they did, for what they were able to accomplish here, and how good the acting is overall in here. And again, I do really like the twist they pull on you in this movie, because it's a twist that you can kind of start to see coming when we get closer to it, but it's not done in the way that you would expect it to do. And I think the performances regarding that twist overall, when they actually reveal what it is, are very well done. And you can understand why that person's trying to hide it and just keep it together during the holiday season. Everybody in this movie is great. Like, it's great to see Alfred Molina and, the late Elizabeth Pena in here, playing the patriarch and matriarch of the family, and you really do buy that they are a couple that still like each other, even though one is kind of distancing themselves from the other in this particular case here. But like I said, everybody plays their parts really well in here. The relationships they build in here are nicely done. It's just it's an entertaining movie. And I said that stuff like The Family Stone and Dan in Real Life and This Christmas kind of started this trend overall. It really began with Home for the Holidays in 1995, which I think is still one of the best underrated Thanksgiving movies you'll ever see. If you never saw that movie, directed by Jodie Foster, starring Holly Hunter, Robert Downey Jr., and Anne Bancroft among its cast, definitely check that one out, because that's the one I would say, watch that one first, then go into the other ones. There really has not been a bad one of these movies in general. Most of them have been pretty formulaic, but they get by because the performances carry it all the way through. And this is one where, yeah, a lot of it is very formulaic, a lot of it's been there, done that, but because the performances carry it through, and it does throw those little twists and turns in there, it makes it kind of worth it in the end. So, mixed opinion, but my thumb is leaning towards it being up more than it is being down. I like it. It's one that every once in a while I'll put it on during the holiday season, but it's not one you're going to want to watch every single year, though. It certainly is a lot better than the other Christmas film outing this year, Four Christmases, I'll give you that, but really, that's not really saying a whole lot. But anyway, that's nothing like the holidays, so let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, which is Delgo. Well, I gotta be honest with you, those video game graphics don't actually look too bad. For the PlayStation 3 back then, when this movie was coming out, or the Xbox. I mean, this looks pretty cool. And wait, this was actually a movie, and it cost $40 million to make. That's $40 million. Oh, crap. Yeah, this movie is notorious for being one of the biggest animation bombs, if not the biggest animation bomb of all time. But clearly you can't see, I mean, it's hard to see why, because of those amazing graphics that would probably play well on, like I said, a PlayStation 3 or an Xbox 360 and not on a big movie screen. Okay, let's talk about the plot for this nightmare, this mess of a movie. Some people it might be a nightmare. But in an exotic divided land, Delgo, an adventurous dreamer but naive teenager, must rally his group of troubled youths and some unlikely friends to protect their world from conflicts between the terrestrial Luckney people who harness the mystery of the land and the winged Norrin people who rule the skies. They lived segregated in an uneasy peace until Delgo was framed for a crime he did not commit. After enlisting the help of an unlikely friend to escape a Nori prison, Delgo discovers Imhoff is in danger, so he must unite the two races against a common foe. And do you really give a shit? I mean, come on. Come on. Like, this movie was one of those movies that I had heard about. I knew it was playing at my theater, but, you know, good and goddamn well, I'm not going to spend my money to watch this garbage on a big screen. And yeah, having seen it later on down the road, and it's probably the best thing I could have done, because if I had seen this movie, this probably would have been the first one I would have ever walked out on, because, yeah, this is bad. This is really, really bad. And for a movie like this to have a budget of $40 million, where did that money go? Probably the casting in here, because, yeah, you got Freddie Prinze Jr., Jennifer Love Hewitt, Anne Bancroft in her last filmo, John Vernon in his last filmo before he died, Chris Kattan, Louis Gossett Jr., Burt Reynolds, Eric Idle, Michael Clark Duncan, Kelly Ripa, Val Kilmer, Malcolm McDowell, Sally Kellerman. A good cast if you had a really good movie to work with here, and not whatever the hell this is. I mean, it doesn't help that the movie looks so ugly and looks like it's such generic BS. Like, you can't even tell what these characters are supposed to be. Like, what species are they supposed to be? Are they supposed to be, like, frog people or lizards? Like, what am I looking at here? Like, it's such a disastrous movie, man. And this is such a mess of a film that it's amazing they spent all that money on this, and this was the end result of that. And just goes to show you that they probably did not use that money well at all. This money was probably spent for, like, drugs and, you know, nights on the town, hookers and blow. I mean, strip nights at the strip club. I mean, anything else but making this movie. And then they realized, and then when the marketer for this film called them and said, "Hey, how's the movie going?" And it's just like, oh shit, we got to put this together in like 20 minutes. So that's what this feels like. This movie feels like it was put together in 20 minutes. And this is all they had to work with here. And just, do I really need to say more about this? It's freaking Delgo, man. Like, this is terrible. This is absolutely awful. Awful, awful, awful. So, with that said, let's get to the Oscar contenders, because we are in Oscar season, and we have 4 other movies to get to here. Most of them were contenders for Academy Awards. Some of them got them, others not so much. Let's start off with the first one here, and that's Meryl Streep, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Viola Davis and Amy Adams in Doubt. It's 1964, St. Nicholas in the Bronx, where a charismatic priest played by Philip Seymour Hoffman is trying to upend the school's strict customs, which had long been fiercely guarded by Sister Aloysius Beaver. I believe that's Meryl Streep, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Meryl Streep. The Iron Glove principal who believes in the power of fear-based discipline. The winds of political change are sweeping through the community, and indeed the school has just accepted its first black student. But when Sister James, a hopeful innocent, shares with Sister Aloysius her guilt-inducing suspicion that Father Flynn is paying too much personal attention to Donald, Sister Aloysius... Is it Aloysius or Aloysius? I think that's Aloysius. I could be wrong on that, but I'm just going to go with it for the rest of this going forward. Her guilt-inducing suspicion that Father Flynn is paying too much personal attention to Donald. Sister Aloysius sets off on a personal crusade to unearth the truth and try to expunge Flynn from the school. Now without a shred of proof besides her moral certainty, Sister Aloysius locks into a battle of wills with Father Flynn, which threatens to tear apart the community with irrevocable consequences. Notable about this movie is that this is actually written and directed by John Patrick Shanley, his first film he wrote and directed since Joe vs. the Volcano, which was one of my favorite movies from 1990. This is definitely not one of my favorite movies from 1990, but it's not from this year, I should say 1990, good lord, from this year, but it's a really good movie. It works because of the strong performances by Meryl Streep and also Philip Seymour Hoffman and Amy Adams. You know, Viola Davis, this was kind of the movie that broke her out a little bit. Everybody kind of didn't know who she was until this, because she got an Academy Award nomination for this. And it is a really good movie. It's a very engaging movie that doesn't feel like the typical, you know, priest movie that we see before. I mean, it's a very different kind of film, and it works on the same levels as something more recently like Conclave did. Conclave kind of worked because it took chances and it wasn't a typical movie that had all the trappings of a typical drama set in the world of a church. They actually did something unique and new with that movie in particular, and they do something new and different here. It's a very unique film with a lot of really good acting talents all across the board in here. Great direction, great cinematography by Roger Deakins, some great music by Howard Shore, and Philip Seymour Hoffman giving another really great performance in here, and everybody here giving a really good performance. It's a very engaging film, and it's one of those it's a very underrated movie. It's a film that I think doesn't get as much attention as it should, but it's still a really good movie. It's definitely one you want to check out, especially if you like the works of John Patrick Shanley, who, of course, did Moonstruck. He got the Oscar for writing the script for that. And, you know, this is a good film. It's a really entertaining film. It's one I recommend checking out. Doubt is one you should see. So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie, and that is Clint Eastwood starring in Gran Torino. Definitely the better Clint Eastwood movie that came out in 2008. Not like Changeling. But this is a movie where you have Eastwood starring as Walt Kowalski, who's a recently widowed Korean War veteran, alienated from his family, with Kowalski's neighbor, Tal Van Loor, I think I'm pronouncing that right, who's pressured by his cousin into stealing Waltz's prize for Torino for his initiation into a gang. Walt thwarts the theft and develops a relationship with the boy and his family. And this is a really good movie, a really entertaining film where Clint Eastwood is just giving his all in this film. I mean, this is kind of the equivalent to, you know, what he did with Unforgiven 16 years ago. Like Unforgiven was kind of seen as his last foray into the Western genre. This feels like one of the last big, great performances that you get from a guy like Eastwood here. But, of course, he's made a lot of good movies, a lot of good since then. But this is probably his last great masterpiece that I've seen from him. This is a really good film where he shows that the guy still has it, man. He still has what it takes. And he's put together an incredible cast in here that works very well, not just with the Hmong Americans in here, but also you see other people in here like Geraldine Hughes from Rocky Balboa, you know, the priest in here played by, who's the priest in here? Trying to see if I can find his name in here. I can't remember what it was. Christopher Carley. He was also in Garden State, and he was also in I just had the name of the movie there. Lions for Lambs. Good lord! I just looked at the page on Wikipedia to see where exactly he was from, but more importantly, Brian Haley. Like, Brian Haley is somebody I hadn't seen in any movie since 1994. I'm sure he had been in some other stuff before, and I think he was on Wings, but I was wondering where the hell he had been. I mean, he's a great character actor and somebody that I was kind of hoping would branch out into bigger things. But I think this was the last thing I saw him in. And he's very good. He's a very good actor in here. You also have Dreamer Walker, who's of course gone on to star in stuff like Don't Trust to Be in Apartment 23, which was a great show. She's been in a lot of other stuff. John Carroll Lynch, a great character actor. Scott Eastwood, of course. But the film is so well done. It's so well put together. And Eastwood really does come off of this character that you know somebody like this guy in real life. And you know that it's interesting to see him be so alienated from everybody. But when he sees the family next door in trouble, like, he has to go in and do something, and and do something about it. And you think it starts off because he wants him to get off of his yard because he's an old man. But as time goes on and the family gets closer to him, he starts to open his heart up a little bit more. And it does lead into a lot of engaging and entertaining excitement all throughout the film. It's a very good movie that really does work all across the board. It's a film that really is one of Clint Eastwood's best movies, and one I always like to go back to every once in a while. This really is the last great masterpiece I've seen from Eastwood. Even though he's made a lot of great movies since then. He's made some great stuff like Sully was really good. Of course, American Sniper, and I've even heard his latest film, Juror Number 2, which did not get a big release anywhere, is supposedly really, really good, but it's fucking Warner Brothers, and David Zaslav is willing to lose more money than actually put a movie out there that actually they believe in. I mean, how do you do that to one of the most respectable people that has ever worked for your studio, Clint Eastwood? But yeah, with all that said, though, Gran Torino is still probably one of my favorite Clint Eastwood movies of all time. It's a film where he gives it his all. One of the really great last performances he ever gave on screen. I mean, it's such a good movie, man. It's such a good movie, and I always like to go back to it. Very good film. If you have not seen Gran Torino, definitely check it out, because you're doing yourself a major disservice by missing it. So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie here, and that's Kate Winslet and Ralph Fiennes starring in The Reader. The Reader. I didn't see The Reader. That was completely pointless. Anytime I think of The Reader, I always think of Hugh Jackman hosting the Oscars, and during the opening musical number, he's talking about The Reader being this movie that was I think was one of the Best Picture nominees, and he's doing the song about all the nominees, and he gets to The Reader, and he's just like, I didn't see The Reader, because I don't think anybody ever saw The Reader before we got to the Academy Awards, and I mean, really, it's not that hard to see why, because this movie really isn't all that good. You got a story here about Michael Berg, played by Ralph Fiennes, who's a German lawyer who as a 15-year-old in 1958 has a sexual relationship with an older woman, played by Kate Winslet. She disappears only to resurface years later as one of the defendants in a war crimes trial stemming from her actions as a guard at a Nazi concentration camp. Michael realizes that Hannah is keeping a personal secret she believes is worse than her Nazi past, a secret which, if revealed, could help her at the trial. And some historians criticize the film for making Schmitz an object of the audience's sympathy and accuse the filmmakers of Holocaust revisionism. I don't know about that, but yeah, the movie is kind of your typical Oscar baitish movie. And the fact that Kate Winslet won the Oscar for this for Best Actress, this really isn't her best performance. She won that Oscar solely because of her body of work. We talk about this every once in a while. You get an Oscar, if somebody wins an Academy Award, and it's all of a sudden it's just like you get it's not even for a good performance. We're doing it because we've realized that we should have given you one in the past. So here's your body of work Oscar. It'd be like the equivalent of me having an Oscar, but they just gave it to me because, I don't know, somebody was bored and nobody wanted it. So here you go. But and yes, I brought this out here to use as a prop once again. I know I said the last time I wouldn't do it, but I can't help it, man. I still really like this. This literally does feel like a real live Oscar, but we're not here to talk about my Oscar. Or we could if you want to, because that's certainly a lot better than this movie here. And to add more proof to maybe this being a body of work Oscar in general, the category itself that year was not that great of a year in general. I mean, there are some performances that I feel like could have been given to so much better performances. Meryl Streep got nominated for Doubt. Melissa Leo got nominated for Frozen River. Angelina Jolie was nominated for Changeling. Anne Hathaway was nominated for Rachel Getting Married. If there was one that I probably would have given it to, I probably would have given it to Anne Hathaway, but a couple weeks from now we're going to see why she didn't win the Oscar, but she would eventually win it, of course. But I feel like there's so many other better movies that Kate Winslet could have been nominated for and won the Oscar for, but this really is not one of her better performances. And even Ralph Fiennes, who never misses a beat with his performances, even he's kind of laying it kind of thick in this one. I don't know. I really did not like this one all that much. I just thought it was a really boring movie. It's more billed as a romantic drama too, and there is not a lot of good romance in this movie, and it just doesn't work. It's a film that is just so bland and so lazy, and it doesn't really give you an idea of what the overall theme and message that they're going for here. What are they trying to get? What am I supposed to take away from this movie in general? And I just never see it in this movie. It's one of those ones that just is like, yeah, I would have replaced this movie's nominations at the Oscars with a much better movie in general, but I mean, I'm not running the Academy Awards, but hey, I got the Oscar behind me, so at least there's that. So okay, moving on here. So yeah, overall, The Reader, not a very good film, and I feel like Kate Winslet should have gotten an Oscar for a much better performance than this. But with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to our last movie that we have here, and that is a long movie about the life of Che Guevara, directed by Steven Soderbergh, starring Benicio del Toro. And I do mean a long movie. This is a film that's spanned into 2 parts and runs for like over 5 hours long. But to its credit, it makes the 5 hours worth it. It's actually a pretty good movie, but then again, Steven Soderbergh's a pretty damn good director. So you have 2 parts here. The first part is called The Argentine and focuses on the Cuban Revolution from the landing of Fidel Castro, Guevara, and other revolutionaries in Cuba to their successful topping of Fulgencio Batista's dictatorship 2 years later. And so part 2 is titled Guerrilla and focuses on Guevara's attempts to bring revolution to Bolivia and his demise. And they're both shot in cinema verite style and each have different approaches to linear narratives, camera work, and visual look. And they have a cast that includes some notable names across the board here. Demian Bichir, Rodrigo Santoro, Santiago Cabrera, Franca Potente, Julia Ormond, Lou Diamond Phillips, Edgar Ramirez, Matt Damon, Oscar Isaac, Jordi Malone. So there is a lot of good talent in this movie, and it is a very compelling movie. Yeah, this is one of those ones where if you can stand to watch a multiple-hour movie like this, it's worth checking out. I mean, I'm the guy that... I mean, I just named Hoop Dreams my favorite film of 1994. Hoop Dreams is one of my favorite movies of all time, and that's a long movie, too. And I know there's people out there that just can't stand to sit there for over 4 hours to watch a movie, which doesn't make any sense because people will sit and watch a 3-hour movie, no problems whatsoever, but 4 or 5 hours? No way, Jose. But maybe it's because they don't realize they can take a break anytime they want to, but... when you watch both of these together, it's a very intriguing movie, and Benicio del Toro is really good as Che Guevara, and it makes this film so unique and very different compared to other films that are very similar to this. And, you know, most of them don't usually work very well, but the film keeps you invested all across the board, and it works because the performances are really good, and the camera work here is very well done. It's a very good movie. These 2 films are very good. I would say the first part is not as good as the second part is. I think the second part really is where the strongest stuff is at, but the first part overall is still a good movie. But the second part is really where the best stuff comes into play. I recommend it. It's one you should definitely check out if you can stand to sit through a multiple 5+ hour movie like this, and I think it's more than worth checking out. Che Guevara Part 1 and Part 2, directed by Steven Soderbergh, definitely one worth checking out. And so with that said, we wrap up this edition of Time About the Movies. And the next time we meet, we'll take a look at the 4 films opening before Christmas. The 4 films opening on the weekend before the holiday. We have Jim Carrey's latest comedy, Yes Man. Will Smith, once again, trying to get that Oscar and trying to get that with the same director of The Pursuit of Happiness with 7 Pounds. We have another animated movie that was more successful than Dogo was, The Tale of Despero. And Mickey Rourke making a big comeback at Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler. So we got 4 films to look at tomorrow on the show, and that's what we'll do then. So be on the lookout for that, as we are getting closer to the end of 2008 here. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please go ahead and hit that playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And also don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, notification button, and the bell. That's where you get updates on when new videos come out, and we do post new videos here every day. So, with all that said, I'm off. I'll see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.